Why do something today when you could put it off until tomorrow? Procrastination is one of the single easiest habits to learn and one that's hugely difficult to overcome. Why do we do it to ourselves? And how can we cure it? We're going to talk about that and more right now. Hi, you're listening to the Fight Coach, Psychotherapist and the Gym Momma. FCPGM is a weekly podcast where we discuss important topics that affect you and your family and tips we suggest that might just help you out. On today's episode, we're not going to postpone this matter any further. Today is the day to deal with putting stuff off on the long finger. Put your devices on Do Not Disturb, lock yourself into a quiet room and let's sort this Manyana disease once and for all. I'm joined, of course, by James White of API Clinics, a psychotherapist well versed in the world of mental health, stress management and anxiety.
How's it going?
Marlene Griffin, aka the Gym Momma, a parent of 3, an owner-manager of a busy martial arts and fitness gym and a lifelong martial artist.
Hi there.
My name is Liam O'Griffin. I'm a professional MMA coach and an e-learning developer with an engineering background. If you'd like to follow along with us using our show notes, you can get them at www.fcpgm.com. There you'll find links to our Facebook community page, our Twitter feed and our Discord server. If you'd like to join the conversation and add your experience and feedback, we'd love to hear from you. So, let's begin. Well, how did the audience like our failed attempt yesterday? We were up all weekend trying to think of that joke. I don't know if it worked or not.
We'll see you.
Yeah, put it in the comments.
Yeah, comments on the FCPGM community page. Did our procrastination gag work? Or was it a dad joke? So, definitions.
Yeah, so the dictionary definition is the act or habit of procrastinating is putting off or delaying, especially something that needs immediate attention, or delaying or postponing. And then when we look into it from the psychological point of view, it's very similar. Researchers define it as a self-regulation failure categorized by the irrational delay of tasks despite potentially negative consequences, meaning that when you put it off, there's a negative impact on yourself for putting it off mentally.
Yeah, so there's lots of different things that we can procrastinate on and others that we don't.
Yeah.
Just because you procrastinate on one particular type of job doesn't mean that you procrastinate on everything across the board. So we were just kind of listing out a few things that we do procrastinate on. The obvious one being work or study.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been an expert at that. Right? I suppose pretty much everybody that's listening is an expert at that as well.
Yeah, I think it's much more common than people think, because the way there are some people who are very noticeably procrastinating, but actually we're all guilty of it. There's always something that we've put off till Manyana, and we don't actually realize we're procrastinating. We're just we're making some excuse that it doesn't either need to be done today, or there's a reason for not doing it. But you're actually just procrastinating. The best of us do it.
And so apart from work and study, any other examples of things that we tend to procrastinate on?
Well, it could be anything that we do. If housework, it could be painting, it could be gardening, it could be washing the car, it could be anything. Yeah,
it could be even just going for a cup of coffee with somebody that you put it off. Like, that's procrastinating. Yeah. It's anything at all, because there's so much, I suppose, we want to do in every day. If we were to be honest with each other, with ourselves, every day we do not get done what we thought we'd get done that day, or what we would have liked to have got done that day. And it's not anybody's fault other than ourselves, because we probably didn't allow the time for it, or we didn't put it in on the list that was what
Or
we
you
want to
took
get
too
done.
much. There was too much on. Like, do you know what I mean? And we talked about that in the time episode. Do you remember not having enough?
Yeah.
But I think procrastination is like slightly different to not having enough time. In that, like, do you know, nobody ever procrastinates on watching TV. Nobody ever procrastinates on Netflix. It just doesn't exist. And there's plenty of examples. Like for the people who are, we say, members of the gym here, they don't procrastinate on going to a fitness class.
Yeah.
Do you know, or do you know somebody? Do you remember Abinu Farris used to come down at 9 a.m. with a school uniform on to train when he was like 14 years of age. Like he had no problem coming down to do a workout, but school out of the question.
But that's what he was doing. He was procrastinating.
He was procrastinating in school. Yeah. So like, do you know, I don't believe it's a time management issue. It's more than that.
Well, they kind of say that the reason that we do procrastinate is because we're either afraid of failing the task, or it's something we actually really don't want to do.
But it is. It's about anxiety. It's about. It can include fear of failure. It's definitely got negative emotions and connotations to it for each individual person when you're doing it. And then when you don't do what it is that you were procrastinating about, then that negative feeling increases. Do you know what I mean? It's also to do with, say, the different tasks. Are they unpleasant, mediocre, boring, non-interesting? Do you know what I mean? But it's definitely got a lot to do with self-control, motivation, not having enough resilience, I suppose, at times. And, you know, the research on it is saying that real bad procrastinators end up with like much more higher levels of stress and anxiety, and then a much lower sense of well-being.
I suppose the feeling of not achieving something can create huge anxiety, because, you know, procrastination can stop people from achieving something, their real dreams.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And do you know, do you ever feel sometimes you kind of go, oh, you put it off and you put it off, and then when eventually you do it, you kind of go, but that wasn't that bad. I could have got that done earlier, or I could have done it better, or I could have just not had all that anxiety about putting off something that.
And that's why the effect of it is long term. It isn't just what you're doing. It isn't when you don't do the job and then you eventually do it. It's after it.
Yeah.
So it's the same as the remuneration in the brain, in the head. Like, and they're saying that at the core of it, it's the inability to manage emotions is really at the foundation of it, from where procrastination is coming from. And that struggle, and again, we spoke about this before about emotional regulation and intelligence, is that, you know, we're not great at tuning in to our emotions at times, do you know what I mean, when we need to. Mm-hmm. And there was some research done by a psychological professor in DePaul University, and his research says that about 20% of people have chronic procrastination. So even though we all have it and it affects us in different ways and different levels, there's a chronic area of it, like, do you know what I mean, which is ongoing over and over and over each and every day. Like,
That must be really hard on people, like, to be.
Yeah.
There's very, very famous procrastinators over the years, and they're kind of funny, because I mean, you know, like the likes of the Dalai Lama was a procrastinator. He's
at one with universe.
Exactly, like, because he used to be a student and he just didn't want to study, and really until he found his calling, then that was it. And now he tells people you shouldn't procrastinate.
Yeah.
When you think of different people, like there was one or two I found was Leonardo da Vinci. That's why there's so many paintings by him that have not been finished, because he couldn't do it. And I thought there was a funny one about Victor Hugo, and his work would have been the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And he just terrible chronic procrastination. So what he used to do is that he used to lock himself into the room and he wasn't allowed to put any clothes on. until he got the work done. So he found like little ways of getting himself to not procrastinate. Other ones would have been, you know, the when you think of Mozart, when he, you know, the opening score for Don Giovanni, he wrote that 2 hours before curtain call. He left it so nobody was able to, like, the actual ink was wet while they were trying to turn the pages, and nobody got a chance to rehearse it or anything. The whole act was done. He left it to the last minute.
That's called the oh shit factor. When you don't have
can
time.
do that, can we?
Yeah, I know.
We'll do that now, and we'll be ahead of time.
But that's the thing about we talked about a couple of the different effects of it, of procrastination. The anxiety being one. The other is a loss of performance, because, okay, fair enough, Mozart and lots of geniuses are lauded for creating works of genius at the last minute, but there's no denying if they had spent more time refining it, they would have done better.
Yeah.
You know, just because they were able to pull something out of the bag that was brilliant doesn't mean that it couldn't have been better had they organized their time a little bit more into kind of refining it and getting some feedback and fine tuning it and all of that. And then the other thing is the loss of time as well. Like as you said a while ago, eventually when you do get out of the rut of procrastinating and finish whatever it is that you were procrastinating on, you suddenly realize, how much time have I wasted worrying about this stupid bloody job that I was putting off and putting off and putting off. So loss of time, loss of performance. There's actually a video that I was watching, and it's a TED talk by a guy by the name of Tim Urban, and it's entitled "Procrastination Inside the Mind of a Master Procrastinator." And he talks about when he was in university and he had to hand up a dissertation, and he had like 6 months to do it. So he sat down on day one and lay out a plan, and that he was going to do an hour a day or 3 hours a day or whatever it was. And then a month went by and it never really happened. And then so he revised his plan, and now instead of 3 hours a day, it was 5 hours a day. And then month 2 went by and nothing happened. So now it was 4 months left, and he revised his plan, and it was now he had to do like 7 hours a day to get the job done. And eventually, 48 hours before his dissertation was due, he had nothing at all done, and he stayed up for 48 hours straight and handed it in. And this is the way he told the story, that he got a call from the dean. Like, he literally dived in slow motion to put the dissertation down on the table as time was running out. And he walked away, fell asleep, whatever. He had a huge relief on him for getting the job done. And he got a call from the dean the following day, and he said, we need to talk to you about your dissertation. And he said, why? What's wrong with it? And they said, nothing. It's the greatest we've ever seen. And then he said, well, that definitely wasn't true. He was actually, no, that's not what happened, obviously. So it just, the point was that, he wanted everybody to kind of believe, you thought I was just after creating a work of masterpiece in 48 hours. Bullshit. The amount of work that he did in the 48 hours was a drop in the ocean compared to his actual potential to create a 6-month volume of work, had he figured out his procrastination early enough. But it's actually a very funny TED talk, because he gives different character names to the different parts of his procrastination. So he's got what he calls the instant gratification monkey, and the rational decision maker is another character in his story, and he's got he's got the panic monster as well, and he does a lot of different cartoon animations as to how these different people interact in his brain. It's very funny. So Tim Urban on TED Talk, I'll have it linked in the show notes below for anybody who wants to kind of watch in on it as well.
But when you were touching on the performance or the loss of performance, like if you look into if we look into, say, athletics, obviously with the gym here and the fighters and even the people who do kettlebells and do competitions, like if they procrastinate, they're going to have a loss of performance on the day or whatever it is whenever they need to perform to their best of their ability. So that's where the problem lies. I mean, myself, I suppose, as everybody does, I procrastinate, but to sort of try and, I've accepted that I do it. Do you know what I mean? So I don't do it anymore to the extent where it's having all that negative effect on me. It helps me manage through whatever it is I need to do going forward and make a plan for it. But you have to make a plan because, you know, we already know from experience ourselves, going back to when we used to do you remember the summer camps with the CDs and all that, like, and leaving everything till the last minute, everything goes wrong and then there's no time to fix it, do you know what I mean?
But I think sometimes you can be, you know, when you bring up something like the summer camp, what happened to us with the summer camp is we took on too much.
Yeah.
So it wasn't it was procrastinating, but it was actually not realising that we had limitations.
Yeah.
They were putting too much, and because you put too much pressure on yourself, then what happens is that you actually even procrastinate on other things as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the straw that breaks the camel's back that just stops the whole process. You know, and it's kind of a little bit of kind of realizing where your limitations are.
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any advantages to procrastination?
I suppose there has to be advantages to it. I'm trying to think if there is an advantage. I think that sometimes maybe we have that kind of knee-jerk reaction, which can get us into trouble. So if you're a procrastinator, you might be somebody that might put off a difficult conversation. You might put off, so there probably is a certain amount of things that you can kind of go, okay, I'm glad now maybe I thought about that more, or I did put that off, or whatever, you know, maybe buying a new car. Next suddenly we're in lockdown. Maybe you're right to be procrastinating or something like that. So there has to be.
I think though it's sort of, what you're describing is sort of different, because when you begin to procrastinate and then you think about it and evaluate it and make a plan, you've stopped the procrastination at that stage and you've looked at things and put it into, you've made up a plan for it.
But you could have put a procrastination on and on and on and on, and then suddenly, you know, sometimes, you know, the way, like somebody would say, oh gosh, lucky now I put that off, but they would have still had all the anxiety.
And that's where it's a problem. Do you know what I mean?
But it could be for the best in the long run. In some cases, not every case, but because, like, I suppose, like in everything we've spoken about in any of the podcasts, it's all about, like, everything we do, there's a reason for it. You know, it's a feeling, yeah. So, like, if we're going to take procrastination in, why isn't that in the same realm that actually it's our body or our head telling us something, and we're...
But that's the whole thing. When your body's giving you information, you have to take that information and use it, evaluate it for a benefit of well-being. If you stay in procrastination, you're going to stay in that negative mindset. Yeah. It's going to affect you for longer, which is going to affect your stress levels, your anxiety levels. So internally, your system is out of kilter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think when you say is there an advantage to it? Yes, if you can stop it and learn from it and do something and use the information and stop letting it go on and on and on. So using it as an indicator rather than something that you're going to dwell in, like.
Well, even in the fighters, you look at like people, how many people procrastinate on their weight loss, and then they have to do savage weight cuts.
Yeah,
but that's definitely not an advantage.
No, it's not.
That's
but
a total
sometimes but maybe some of them have to do it at least once to kind of realise that can't be done.
As in, they learn a lesson from the one time they did procrastinate, and that they learn never to do it again.
Yeah.
Well, the other possible advantage is a few of the people that you mentioned a little bit earlier on, including Leonardo DiCaprio and Leonardo da Vinci, not DiCaprio, but Leonardo da Vinci, but a lot of famous inventors would have been procrastinators in some shape or form as well. And during times of procrastination, we talk about, we say in today's climate, we go binge on Netflix if we're trying to procrastinate or if we're actively procrastinating. 100 years ago, obviously, they didn't have Netflix. So what would they have done? Well, a lot of them would have chased a dragon and gone off and done hallucinogenics. And there's a huge number of famous inventors who came up with solutions to engineering problems based on being high and stoned off their head on all sorts of hallucinogenics like LSD and ecstasy and
we were talking about
opium.
this yesterday morning because the likes of, say, Freud and Einstein and all them type of people, they were all on opioids. But you see, the thing about it is, if you think about what is it doing, even the hallucinogenics is, it's taking yourself out of reality. So it's taking your mind away from all of the hustle and bustle challenges of life that life face you, and giving you a space where it's free to do whatever it's doing. And that's when they have the aha moments. So very similar to what people will say about meditation or mindfulness, when you're doing that to bring you to that sort of same space where you're not in the overthinking realm, allows your mind then to actually come up with clearer solutions.
But you're not going to get that same level of aha moment watching Netflix.
Oh, no, absolutely no, not at all.
So it's different. It like procrastination nowadays is far more destructive than it would have been 100 years ago. Like procrastination 100 years ago might have included going for a walk in the orchard.
But sure, it was interesting when I was doing the research on it. It came up with I can't remember now where I got it from. It's definitely one of the links anyway. But the statement was, believe it or not, the internet didn't give rise to procrastination. People have struggled with this going back to ancient civilization, as the Greek poet Hesiod said in 800 BC, caution, don't put your work off till tomorrow and the day after. So that's like going way, way back before any internet or anything like that. Do you know what I mean? So they were aware of it. They were doing it back then, like.
So one of the most useful sources that I came across, and it popped up in a few different sources, was a book by the name by a guy by the name of Piers Steele, and the book was called The Procrastination Equation. Now, I've done a lot of maths in my time, and this is definitely not a mathematical formula, but it's just more of a kind of a conceptual formula. But it is the following: that motivation. So the motivation being in this book's opinion, motivation is the opposite of procrastination, and he says that motivation is equal to expectancy times value, all divided by impulsiveness times delay. So now trying to reason that all out in one is almost impossible. So I have to kind of break it down into 4 different parts. Okay, so first off, you have to define expectancy. So think of this as what you expect the result to be of a particular task. So if you're looking at Mount Everest ahead of you and you're at the bottom of it, and let's say you've never done a day's exercise in your life, and you're looking at the mountain, you say, "There's no freaking way I'm getting up that mountain." You know, so the expectancy is hugely low. So in other words, your motivation for climbing Mount Everest as a couch potato is almost zero. Whereas if you're Pat Falvey, it's maybe a little bit better, right? So expectancy is the idea of whether you can achieve it or not.
So that's the expectations in your head, like about the task,
about the task itself, and what your ability towards that task is, whether it's achievable or not. So this goes back to our goal setting and setting realistic goals. So expectancy at the top of the line. The value is the second variable in this equation. So value is what good is it to achieve this task? Why is it of any benefit to you? Do you know? So if the task is to make a pile of rocks 100 rocks high, why is that of any benefit to you? Are you going to, someone's just going to come over and kick the pile over and it's of no value to you? or were you training and working out and using this as a bit of a weightlifting exercise? Is there a value to the task to you? So at the top of the line, so on motivation is equal to expectancy times value. So you need to increase anything above the line. You need to increase. You need to increase your expectation that you're going to succeed, and you need to increase the value of the task to you. Now below the line, there's two different things below the line. Impulsiveness. So this is the idea of getting distracted. So anything that can distract you is going to deviate you from that task. It's going to help you to procrastinate.
So that's where he came in with not wearing any clothes. Obviously, his clothes distracted him.
No, I think that would have been the value. The value to him of completing his task would have been that he would have gotten to not be naked anymore. But the distractions nowadays are like notifications on your phone. I suppose back in 100 years ago, distractions would have been your friends saying, "Come on, we're going over there smoking some opium," or we're going for a walk in the orchard, or whatever it was back 100 years ago. So just basically distractions. That's it. So that's below the line. And then the fourth variable is delay. So delay means how much time elapses from the time you complete the task to the time you receive the value of the task. So if you need to, we say, practice your scales for music now, but it means that you won't be a master of it for 10 years, then that's a big hurdle for you in order to do that task of practicing your scales, because it's not instant gratification. It's the opposite of instant gratification. So you need to reduce the sense of that long-term payoff. So just to kind of go through it again, motivation is on above the line, expectancy times value, and below the line, impulsiveness times delay. And literally, if you were to think of every single task that you're procrastinating on right now, you can manipulate each one of those four variables in order to help you to procrastinate less. Now, easier said than done, but let's take a few examples. I don't know. Let's spitball a few examples. What could somebody be procrastinating on? I'll start. Let's say studying for an exam. All right, you've got 3 months, and the exam is in 3 months' time, and you've got a certain amount of work to get through. So let's increase the expectancy. So
you want to set it a target of what you expect to achieve in the exam. We'll say, I want to get an A.
Yep, or you need to make sure that the exam is at the right level for you. So if you're 6 years old and you're doing quantum physics at university level, that's a wrong expectation. But if it's like a spelling test, well, then that's a different thing. So making sure that you're studying at the correct level would be setting the expectancy.
Okay.
Or giving yourself enough time that it's possible to achieve it in that time. So what about the value? How would you increase the value of it?
Well, the value is depending on whatever the outcome of the exam is, could lead you to further education into the field that you want to go into. Mm-hmm. So, for example, somebody who passes the HPAT, it gets them a doorway into the medical field. Mm-hmm. If you don't take the HPAT, you can't.
So how could you? So you can't manipulate
the HPAT. No.
But what you can do is you can set yourself a reward if you pass the exam. So, for example, you could say, right, I'm not going to go on holidays this year unless I pass that exam.
Yeah, so then there's a consequence to it.
Yeah. So that's a way of manipulating the value of the task, the impulsiveness. So if you know that there's a certain amount of things that could distract you between here and the next 3 months, how are you going to stop that? So you can say, right, I have a rule. I'm not going to go out any Saturday night for the next 3 months. You can set rules, or you can tell your friends, right, don't invite me.
Yeah, someone on one of the courses I was teaching the weekend, he has what he calls do not disturb, and he texts it to all his friends to say, do not disturb me between 11 and 2 every day, I'm studying.
Yeah, that's it. and then you have your delay. Then how can you delay the time for this one? I don't think it's possible to increase or decrease the delay of the gratification of passing that exam. The deadline is 3 months' time.
Yeah.
Maybe what you can do is give yourself some mini goals in between now and the exam in 3 months'
so
time.
You could put in mini places that you want to hit to say that I know whatever the exam is in, I can test myself on it to say that I have that done.
Yeah, exactly. So that's one kind of real world example.
That's like the Atomic Habits again. You know, that book that we have in the I've brought up a few times because that's talking about habit stacking.
Yeah.
So I suppose that comes in hugely for procrastination as well.
Yeah. So let's take one more example. So something else. Can you think of anything that you guys would have procrastinated on, and let's see if we can figure out how to use the procrastination formula or the procrastination equation to make it more manageable.
Okay, so just a simple task that I need to do today. It's the booking system that we have. They're changing over how the bank is done. So I've already filled it in, but they've come back with 3 other items that have to be done. So that was Thursday, and today is Monday, and I haven't done yet. So the
expectancy.
Yes, so I need to do that today. The value of it is that as soon as it's done, then the money goes into our business account from whatever was collected over the last month on the booking system. So that would be the value.
Well, that's the value, but how do you manipulate the value? How do you make that more valuable to you?
We need it.
I know, but how can you manipulate it now? So can you make that more valuable? Can you give yourself a reward for getting it done?
Can I give myself a reward? I can go to bed tonight not worried about it would be a reward enough for me. Because it means that the rent gets paid if I do that. So I suppose the reward for me in that situation is just not having
the stress
of the worry of it.
I know, but that hasn't changed. So if you're procrastinating since Thursday on it, that value hasn't changed. So in order to stop procrastinating on it, the procrastination formula would say you need to increase the value of it, or increase the expectancy that you will succeed. So that's the thing about this is not like the procrastination equation is not meant for you to justify why you should do it. It's meant for you to manipulate the 4 values so that you do it.
But you see, there's a big problem there, because one of the problems is the motivation. And that's what I was saying to you earlier on, that even though the equation is quite good, it needs to be coupled with resilience.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I agree. I'm just trying to tease this through.
Your motivation hasn't changed. You know all the reasons why you should do it. You know the benefits of what's
so at the moment you're justifying it.
So you're not increasing anything there, like you said.
Okay, so the expectancy is that it's a task that possibly seems very difficult to do. Would that be? Is there bits of it that are awkward?
Awkward because I suppose I haven't spent the time to sit there and actually look at what they want. It's not really. It's not something that motivates me. Because I will always say these things. Oh, I don't like doing that part. So it's kind of something I don't like doing. So I suppose that's why it's hard to put a value on it. I already know the value on it, but at the end of the day, the value is probably not. Yeah, but
it's not. It's not that you're not supposed to know the value of it. You're supposed to increase the value of it. If you're to use this equation better. So this is the whole point of the equation. It's not figuring out what the value of it is. It's how do you increase the value of it? How do you increase your expectation of succeeding on it?
But that's probably where I'm finding the difficulty is because the value, there is no extra value to me doing it other than what I've said. So to increase it, I'm not sure I'm not sure how I'd increase that.
Well, unless you give
yourself
yourself something for doing it,
Yeah.
for completing the task. So
you pay yourself a commission
don't
on
buy another pair of shoes.
you pay yourself a commission on it. You get yourself a cake. You go for a coffee. You meet a friend. So there's a reward for getting it done. So that would be, and I'm not saying that that's what you have to do. I'm just saying that this,
That's what
if
the
you were to
equation
use
is.
the procrastination
Yeah,
equation,
yeah,
this is
yeah.
how it would work.
So
The
I'm
expectancy on
going to
it.
take a commission on.
The expectancy thing of it is, okay, so you might expect, oh, this is going to be a hard job that's going to take me 3 or 4 hours to do. Well, then chunking the job into smaller pieces. So say that you said there was 3 things to do. So I'm only going to do one thing before lunch. That would increase the expectation or the expectancy that it is achievable, because
But
one job is easier to do than 3.
Well, at least I did that today. I actually put something in my bag this morning in anticipation of doing it today.
So
That
in-
was one thing.
So the 2 below the line, so the impulsiveness, what could possibly distract you from doing it?
Everything.
So how
Anything.
Anything.
So how do you like? So okay, all right, and then the delay. There is no. I don't. Again, the delay. I don't know. I don't know how to change the delay in this particular one.
Well, there's probably a consequence if you don't get it done. The consequence is that we're not going to pay the rent.
This is getting way too serious. All right. So anyway, that's the procrastination equation, and I think if listeners or viewers out there, just take any one of your jobs or tasks that you're procrastinating on, and just have a think about those 4 variables within that task: the expectancy, the value, the impulsiveness, and the delay, and see how you can manipulate them. And again, this is not about figuring out what you already know about it. It's not that, because there's a reason why you don't have the motivation to do it already. It's because those 4 values are what they are, and figuring out what they are now is of no help to you. It's how do you manipulate those 4 to increase your motivation. So you've got to increase your expectancy that you're going to succeed. So that would be making the task easier in the first place, or breaking it into easier, smaller chunks. Increasing the value of it. So either give yourself a reward for completing it, or pay yourself to do it, or
Somebody else.
figure. Yeah. And then the impulsiveness is to kill all the possible distractions. So be deliberate about the environment in which you're doing this task. So don't have your phone beside you while you're doing it, or don't have, don't do it in a crowded place where people are going to be walking by and having a chat with you all day long. So this is partly our problem most of the time here in the gyms, that no matter what we go to do in the gym, there's just too many people around all the time. And then the delay, how can you get sooner gratification from the task at hand, rather than taking the payback to be pushed way down the road, So the procrastination equation by Piers Steele, definitely recommend having a look at that.
So, like, I've put into the PCG.
Oh, Jesus.
FCPGM in the notes, and there's a book out there called Learned Optimism, and I spoke about Martin Seligman before. He's the father of positive psychology, and one of the things that I find interesting in what he's saying is how we can change our mindset from pessimistic to optimistic, and in the realms of even say the motivation part, to help you increase your motivation and build your resilience. He talks about having that sense of being calmer, which goes back to what you were saying, is when these creative geniuses were out of the head on opioids and stuff like that. But it's finding a sense of how can I create my own inner calm, or be calmer in the face of these things that I procrastinate about, and then using emotion resilience. So that's actually where you're feeling the feeling, or feeling the negative emotion that you have, and using that as an information to say, okay, I know it's here, but I also know that if I'm in a pessimistic point of view, if I'm looking at stuff from a pessimistic point of view, what Seligman says is, when we're pessimistic, we're looking at things that stuff is permanent, so it isn't going to go away. We're looking at it that it's personal, that it's usually generally to do with us and it's our fault, and we're looking at it as in a pervasive, which means that it always happens and I'm just not good enough and I can't do it. Do you know what I mean? And what you want to do is you want to actually change that sense to understanding that in times of challenges or stuff that we face that we're being pessimistic about is that it's not always personal. It doesn't necessarily mean just because, let's take it on the scenario of a work perspective where a boss criticizes your work or something like that. It doesn't mean that means that you're a failure. It just means whatever it was in that situation at that time and whatever was going on for that person, he felt that you didn't live up to your capabilities. So there's a learning in that to say, well, okay, I didn't fulfill his expectations. What can I do to increase it maybe the next time going forward? The other thing is understanding that it isn't permanent, that's just a temporary moment in time for that situation. And then also knowing that just because you were challenged in that situation, it doesn't mean that all situations need to be like that. Yeah, so you're flipping it.
But I think as well in procrastination, sometimes like it's kind of, it nearly tips on being a little bit in a lonely place. You know, if I find that some people procrastinate without a team around them. Because, when you can't feel up all the time, or you can't feel motivated all the time or positive, because that's what we've done over this time. Like, we all feel certain things, and sometimes we need people to get us over the line.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes very strongly with procrastination as well, because you need somebody to kind of help with that motivation part where you have like like somebody else can actually come in and use the equation there very easily and say, look, if you get that done, sure, look, I'll meet you for a cup of coffee when you have it done. There's the value
got. That's in the realms of what's called psychological safety. And Google did a study a couple of years ago in how to build better teams and how to increase motivation and how to stop people procrastinating and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what surprised them was that the number one thing on it was psychological safety. And what they meant by psychological safety was being heard and being listened to and being allowed to freely flow open ideas. So in other words, people were holding back from, stepping outside their box because they had this fear of what people were going to say about them or how they were going to be ridiculed or how they're, even when you make that joke, if you're joking with somebody and you don't mean to have an impact on the person in a negative way, but internally they take it that way, and it could be like, oh, you dope, you. That simple statement, depending on the situation, can actually put somebody over the edge internally, emotionally. Do you know what I mean? So that's what it is. That's psychological safety, what you're talking about, and it is about being able to ask other people for help or support. But it's understanding that some people, because we're human, aren't able to do that. So they'll make fun of it or make light of it or try and not get involved too deeply because emotionally they can't take it. So it's knowing those people that you can go to and ask for support and help. And if it's in a work perspective, that's what teams should be about, that there should be a team built around. So say for here, we have us as this our core team, and then we have an external team that adds to us in different ways, and we have different people that we approach for different reasons because we know they will support us psychologically. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
All right, I think we're ready for tips.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like all of these different tips that we've kind of put down here are kind of based on everything that we've talked about up until this point. And they're based on resources and articles and books that we've looked at and reviewed. So if you want to kind of dive deeper into any of those sources, they're always in the show notes. And particularly with regards to the books, we mention this every week, but it bears reminding you again. The links that we have in the show notes are always Amazon affiliate links. So if one of those books that we recommend tickles your fancy and you would like to buy that book, well then if you use the Amazon affiliate link that we have in the show notes below, it doesn't cost you anything extra to get the book, but we get a kickback from it, and that helps us to keep this podcast going. It helps to pay for our website hosting for all these episodes and things like that. So if you do want to support the podcast, that would be the easiest possible way to do it. So just use the Amazon affiliate links in the show notes below. And we'll all benefit from it. It's a couple of pence and it really helps us out. So if you can do that.
There was one quick thing before we go into the tips, which we didn't cover, which is being compassionate with yourself. So actually understanding that it's okay to procrastinate, but to understand that if you're doing it in a way where you're feeling that you're not good enough, you can't do it, you're a failure, then you need to have some compassion with yourself, because it's not always the truth. And again, there is a book in the show notes there called Self-Compassion by Kirsten F., which we spoke about Kirsten before.
Yeah, self-compassion came up on a few different topics so far this month. So, yeah. So, right, let's get tip number 1. Who wants to do tip number 1 there? So
tip number 1 is understand the value of the job at hand, and if it's not enough, make it more valuable. So that sort of goes in line with the equation that you have gone through there, that name's gone through there, is making sure that whatever it is, the value of what you're doing, make sure that it's valuable enough that will help you get through and push through the procrastination so you can get it done.
Mm-hmm. Number 2.
Chunk jobs into easier, smaller tasks. So this one is really important because this kind of comes about with one of the books that I always recommend is Atomic Habits. And it's about doing kind of, maybe there's a big task and that you can deliberately kind of maybe break it down into smaller goals so that you can achieve and then add and add and add and add until you get to the outcome of the actual end goal, which is to do it. So it's a bit of, like, we'll say, if it's the way, like you said earlier, that you have a test at the end of the week, or maybe a weight cut, that you literally make a habit that will help you in that journey, a small habit. It could be, if it's weight cutting, it could be maybe cutting out sugar, and adding and adding and adding to that. And then kind of as you come nearer the D-Day, you can actually probably become, add more value and everything to it. But it really is, it has to start with making a plan and breaking down the task.
Yeah.
So the third one is all about distractions, limiting your distractions. And this is to be very deliberate about your workspace, wherever it is that you plan on doing this task. So if it's to do with studying for an exam, well, then have a place to study. So this, I just remember from my own study days from CIT, when people used to go to the library to study, and it was the done thing that this is where you go to study. But sure, everybody and their dog was in the library around exam time, and sure, nothing was done because everybody was chatting to whoever was beside them, and there was so much energy in the library. Now, outside of exam time, it was great because it was quiet. There was a desk. You weren't allowed to have phones. You weren't allowed to talk. But it whatever that is, with, like, if we say writers and authors have this this problem all the time. They get writer's block, and a lot of times it's to do with just not having the kind of correct space to write in. So if that means that you just have like a cupboard that's basically like has a lock on the door, and there's a kind of a bean bag to sit on, and you can put your laptop up on top of your lap, well, then that's your space. But have a space and have it free from distractions. So once you enter that space, make sure that you turn all your notifications off. Make sure that you put a do not disturb sign on the outside door handle, or whatever it is you need to do. A lot of companies actually have a system of do not disturb, where they actually have flags that they put on their PCs. So if you're in a kind of a corporate environment and there's multiple desks in a large room, or lots of offices, they actually have like little red flags or green flags or yellow flags, and they put them on their computer. And if there's a red flag on your computer, don't go near that person. So that's a kind of like a deliberate workspace, and it's a kind of a corporate, I suppose, a tradition or a method of working, and everybody honors the flag system. red flag, stay away from me. Yellow flag, yeah, if it's important, come over. Green flag, I'm free, come on away. Do you know? So be deliberate about your workspace, and that's unique to you. If you're a painter, that's unique to you. If you play cards, that's unique to you. You have to figure out whatever your workspace is, but make it deliberate and make it conducive to work and not conducive to distractions. Fourth one.
If all else fails, delegate or hire. That would be my favourite.
Well, I think I would add to that though, would be ask for support. Like,
Yeah, well, that's probably what it is. It's not like I suppose when you say if all else fails, it's not a failure. It's just recognizing that maybe the task, like when you took it on, is maybe a little bit overwhelming. It's kind of something that you're finding it difficult to get over a hump. Do you know what I mean? You just have a writer's block, something, and it's okay for somebody to come in and ask for help, and somebody to come in and kind of give you a little couple of alternatives. It could be a chat. It could be that they take something from your task that will they can do and help you on, or it would be a case of that you just say, "Feck this! I'm just going to get somebody else to come in and paint that room." It's just as simple as that. And and when you think about it, I suppose when you talk about, we'll say, procrastinating, the sitting room needs to be painted. The sitting room needs to be painted. I'm not a painter. I don't want to do it, so I hire a painter in. You didn't fail at the task. You still achieved the task, but you just picked another way of achieving it.
Yep.
And so that's really important with procrastination.
So there you go, guys. There's our 4 tips anyway, top tips. So let's just review them really quick one more time. So number 1, understand the value of the job at hand, and if it's not enough, make it more valuable. Number 2, chunk jobs into easier and smaller tasks. Number 3, be deliberate about your work environment and limit distractions. And 4, if all else fails, delegate or hire. Hopefully those tips help. Again, all of the books, articles, videos, websites that we recommend are in the show notes, so go check them out. I believe we might have, do we have a quote of the week, or do you need more time?
Yeah, and it's, and this quote is, I suppose, it's a good one, but then I'm going to probably put kind of something else in, just say something before I say it. It's not as when somebody is procrastinating, and if they're very chronic at it, it's like you just can't kind of say, look, just do it. That's the same as somebody being down and having a bad day, and you're like, come on, like, get over yourself. It's the same thing. So I suppose, like, when I say my quote, I am taking that into consideration, because it's not as simple as that. So my quote is, every day spent procrastinating is another day spent worrying about that thing. Do it now and move on with your life. And again, I love the quote, but I do think that it has to be very deliberate, that, like, when I am advising kind of move on, we're advising that about the tips.
Yeah.
Where the moving on is actually looking at how you can get it done, not just a case of, look, get over yourself and get out there. So that kind of, I just wanted to make that very clear.
Who's it by?
It's actually not another unknown. Yeah, so I can kind of claim all these ones. Can I? So, but it is, I love the quote, but it really isn't. It's not being frivolous about, like, somebody having difficulty doing procrastinating.
So, yep, that's it. There you go. You have our quote of the week. You have our thoughts and tips, and that's it. So whatever it is you've been putting off, go ahead and just do it now and leave us alone, and we'll go and do our jobs.
How about we set out a task today? I promise I will have my bit done today, but let's see if everybody on the FCPGM community page can actually just write done. Just put done in the comments. So set yourself, you don't have to admit to the task, but is there something that you're putting off, and could you put done on the comments? And let's see how many people we can motivate from this.
Cool.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. That's been your FCPGM podcast for the week. Let's go around the table and see where we can find everybody. So, Jimmy, where are we going to find you?
Find me at www.apiclinics.com.
Mar?
You can find me on all the social medias, Marlene Griffin SPG. But the best place to find me is actually on at the reception from the 1st of December. The reception at SPG Cork City. I'm always there for a cuppa and a chat.
You find me at Liam OG Griffin on Twitter. And as always, the website for this podcast is www.fcpgm.com. And this has been the Fight Coach, the Psychotherapist, and the Gym Mama. Until next week, guys, look after yourselves.